Leanne, and continuing this conversation rather with the SAUBC's George, and he of course back with us. George Sebulela, thanks so much for coming back to us. Hope the line is better. So just with regard to the primary concern that some black businesses had regarding their participation in the 20 billion rand purchase of PPE, can we just speak to that very briefly?
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to talk too much on behalf of black business, but I would talk on behalf of the members of the South African United Business Confederation. The challenge was that the members had an issue of access in terms of supply of goods and services to the state. As you know, that National Treasury has been the centerpiece of procurement for the entire state in the country through National Treasury for all particularly universal contracts. And we took it upon ourselves to really deal with this matter quite quickly, and we discovered that the organization, which is really a private body of business that they have come together, called Business for South Africa, was in the center of this procurement, and which was quite a serious concern for us, purely because we felt that it is impossible and unheard of for government to outsource its procurement to a private individual, as opposed to be controlled by government, municipalities, or provincial governments, which are all have a number of, senior executives who are procurement specialists, and there are rules and regulations that need to be adhered. So how do you ensure that there's enough governance?
So what was the explanation then in terms of exactly why and when BASA were tasked with selecting the businesses to procure goods? George, can you still hear me?
I can't hear you.
Well, can you hear me now, George?
Yeah, can you repeat?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So my question was, when exactly, unfortunately, I think we lost George again there. This one not going according to plan, unfortunately. We'll try and get back to this interview. And it, of course, speaks to a decision by Treasury to reverse an earlier decision regarding BASA being tasked with selecting of businesses to procure goods, and what exactly the other businesses, black businesses in particular, were opposed to, because they said, as you heard George repeat there, they felt that this was a function that government could not outsource to a private entity, as was the case with BASA. And then we saw, of course, Treasury reinstating its processes, and we await to hear from George again exactly what the way forward will be here. But we are struggling with that line, so our apologies for that. But if we can get George back on a better line, we certainly will ask. So George, just coming back, and I hope it's third time lucky that the line is going to hold and we can finish this conversation. Yes. I was asking about exactly why. What was the reasoning that went behind BASA being tasked with selecting the businesses to procure goods on behalf of government, and who took that decision in the first place?
Well, I honestly, it's a very good question, but I mean, we're not part of BASA. We not sit on the panel of BASA. In fact, we don't even know how it was constituted, because we were never invited to participate as a large business confederation. So, and surely there must not have been a bad intention. I think the concern here is, from the government point of view, we were just worried that how would the government really allow this procurement process to be run by an external private party when government has the capacity to run this procurement. And if in case there was no capacity, we would probably even expect people to be seconded to government, not the other way around. So I think that was really the major concern. But I'm glad that the National Treasury has heeded to the call. They have withdrawn, and people will have the opportunity to be treated in the same way, and there would be procurement processes and conditions to be followed, and nobody will complain again.
George, let's cut to the chase here. Are you inferring here that there was a level of corruption that was taking place?
No, I would not even think there was corruption. I have no evidence to that effect, and really, for us, it was us and government. It was not to go and scrutinize. And I think this is one of the most important message we mentioned, that we don't want another new commission of COVID-19 where we have to investigate who was paid what and when was it paid and so on. I think we've got enough challenges for the country. Our plan is to improve the economy of this country and to improve the lives of the citizens of this country. So for us, anything that is going to stand the way on that objective and that vision of creating South Africa to become the best and the preferred destination, investment destination in the world, we are definitely going to raise it without no fear, no favor. We will make sure that we want to see a progressive South Africa. And we don't have time for blame games. We just want things to be done properly and people to be treated properly and contribute to the development of this country.
But in the end, it's not about a blame game. It is about ensuring that things are done by the book for, as you say, at worst, to try and prevent another commission of inquiry into potential corruption, into the spend on COVID-19. But how do you suggest that potential corruption is stopped in its tracks, George?
Well, in this particular case, look, I think has all the systems with corruption and they've got the law enforcement.
Well, unfortunately, George Sebulela, we cannot continue that because the line once again is not clear and I can't hear. That means the viewers out there cannot hear you. So unfortunately, we're going to have to stop that at this point. But South African United Business Confederation President George Sebulela discussing the procurement process of goods and services relating to the COVID-19 disaster management's central emergency procurement strategy. So what has happened here is that, of course, National Treasury has now taken a decision to reconsider the procurement process for COVID-19 services and PPE, testing kits, ventilators, and it was centralized to Business South Africa, BASA. But as you heard George explain there, the government cannot outsource that procurement function to a private entity. And the SAUB has since taken the Treasury, I should say, has since made a roundabout turn on that particular decision. So that's unfortunately where we're going to have to leave it because the connection is not great. But in a nutshell, that was what that discussion was essentially about.